So this is obviously a huge topic. When I told my husband that I was giving a talk about change, he said, hopefully loose change. And I said, no, but it did help instruct me how wide the topic really is. And so I've put some thoughts to paper. We'll share them with you today, but I'm equally interested in hearing your own thoughts about change, and look forward to sharing that with you later on. So I'll start out by asking you, what are you afraid of? Let's try to stay away from moving objects like spiders, feral cats, tax auditors. What things in life are you afraid of? Regardless of your answer, I'm sure it involves some sort of change in your life, whether big or small. But in speaking with you today, I'm here to tell you that whatever change of circumstance comes your way, the manner in which you will greet it will help determine how it is integrated into your life. In other words, you still have some control. I love this quote from Dr. Stephen Hawking. I have noticed that even people who claim everything is predestined and there is nothing we can do to change it, look before they cross the road. When Stephen Hawking tells us that we simply shouldn't accept change without adaptation, he speaks with authority. So it would be very easy to stand up here and tell you that I adore change and adapt readily, but the fact is, like most of us, I have struggled with it over the years. But lately, I've been thinking about this subject a lot, since my work involves studying creativity across the disciplines. And slowly, in a process full of wonderment, I have begun to consider change differently. So I invite you this morning to trace this journey with me and see if along the way, your own notions of what change can portend for all of us begin to open up and expand as well. The great Stanley Kubrick gave the following name to his landmark film, which we have unfortunately shortened, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. In homage to that terrific title, I am calling this talk My Strange Love, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Change. So picture this. You're born an obedient child, a diligent student. You grow and develop, crafting your dreams with respectable, even ambitious goals, and steadfastly play by the rules along the way as you pursue them. Then, bam, the big thing happens. Insert your circumstance of choice, perhaps something big like illness or death, but perhaps something less dramatic, but still painful. Losing a job, falling out with someone, the loss of property. In other words, a change of reality resulting in a metaphorical meteor landing in the backyard of your life. A complete or partial game changer. You're left reeling, stunned, and eventually looking for answers. It's the randomness of it, of course, the complete unfairness of it all. Maybe you didn't deserve this, and it's not your fault. Rather, it's just some cosmic screw-up that allowed this to arrive on your doorstep without you having placed an order, either through desire or conduct. We have now entered what I call the Plan B moment. In changing course, we encounter a forced modulation. We've always sung in C major, and now we have only G minor. So what now? Sometimes we have the luxury of time to consider. Other times, we struggle to simply stay afloat. And yet, I have come to think of these Plan B moments, forks in the road, as the time when we summon up wells of strength and imagination that were heretofore unknown, and when we exfoliate our lives. There comes a time when the playbook gets thrown out and our own imaginations and hearts govern our next steps. So perhaps this is all sounding new age and metaphorical to you. So let's consider some examples. Whether we openly acknowledge it or not, we look for change and resilience in others. We condemn smugness and passivity. We tend to admire the progressive mind. Here is a personification to me of stasis or non-change. You have the feeling that if Whistler had said to this couple, "I'll be back to paint you again in the next few years," he would have produced an identical picture. So here is the polar opposite, a personification of change. This is Nicholas Copernicus, a 16th century astronomer and mathematician who made the revolutionary assertion that it is the sun rather than the earth that is the center of the solar system. I say revolutionary because this assertion was deemed as blasphemy by those in power, and he was pronounced as a heretic. His ideas of change were too profound for his time, and indeed for many decades following his death. Just ask Galileo about that. But change doesn't have to be fundamental to shake us to our core and cause us to abandon the precious rule book. Here is a highly edited clip from the movie Apollo 13, which I assume many of you have seen. For those who haven't, I'll just set the scene. Following an explosion in the space capsule, which renders the mission's original plan of landing on the moon moot, the focus of the mission now becomes getting the astronauts back to Earth safely. An immediate challenge is how to make sure there is clean air to breathe as the CO2 levels begin to rise to dangerous levels.
Tell me this isn't a government operation.
This just isn't a contingency we've remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Better get some coffee going, too, someone.
His family lives in El Lago, Texas. His wife, Mary, is from Biloxi, Mississippi. When Fred Hayes was growing up in Biloxi, he may have looked ahead to a fine family, but he never
We're
did.
not doing this, gentlemen. We are not going to do this. We're not going to go bouncing off the walls for 10 minutes. Because we're just going to end up right back here with the same problems. Trying to figure out how to stay alive.
Aquarius, this is Houston.
Are we on Vox?
No, we're not on Vox.
Yeah, Houston, this is Aquarius. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, could you check your CO2 gauge for us?
Yeah, Houston, we were just looking at that. Our CO2 measurement has jumped 4 notches in the last hour.
That can't be right. I went over those numbers 3 times.
Jim, that sounds about right. We were expecting that.
Well, that's very comforting to know, Houston. What do we do about it?
Jim, we're working on a procedure down here for you. Do you copy?
Oh, Christ.
All right, Houston, we're standing by for those procedures.
Christ, I know why my numbers are wrong. I only figured it for 2 people. Maybe I should just hold my breath.
The deadly CO2 gas is literally poisoning the astronauts with every breath in and out.
Heads up, heads up.
And spokespeople will not comment further.
Go. Heads up, people, look out now.
What's this?
That's what they gotta make.
Well, I hope you got the procedures for me.
Right here.
That's it?
All right, Aquarius, this is Houston. Do you have a flight plan up there?
Affirmative, Andy. Jack's got one right here.
Okay, we have an unusual procedure for you here.
We need you to rip the cover off.
I want you to rip the cover off the flight plan.
With pleasure.
All right, now the other materials you're going to need here are a lithium
Hydroxide canister. You need 2 lithium hydroxide canisters, I'm sorry. A roll of gray tape.
Duct tape.
That's duct tape. You need an LCG bag, 2 LCG bags, red suit hoses, and you've got the flight plan covered.
Excuse me, can you give me a timetable? What about their level of carbon dioxide?
It's climbing.
You're saying that they're almost out of breathable air.
No, wait a second. That's not what he said. He said we're working.
You want to cut the duct tape 3 feet long.
Tell me this arm.
Just use your arm.
It's a good arm length.
Oh, okay, Houston, I see what you're getting at. Hold on. Okay, Jack, tear that piece of tape down the middle lengthwise.
All right.
Hold on, Houston.
While the astronauts appear to have enough oxygen to keep them alive, one thing they have too much of is carbon dioxide. With each breath, the 3 men expel more of the poisonous gas into the lunar module cockpit, and the scrubbers intended to keep the atmosphere breathable are quickly becoming saturated.
Shit, I tore it. Shit. Houston, what do we do if we rip the bag? Can we tape it?
They just tore the bag. Stand by. What you tell them to do?
Well, they should have one more bag left.
But they've still got a long way to come, and they are now working on their backup facilities, their emergency facilities, and the problem is, if anything more goes wrong, they're in real trouble.
Once you have the sock in place, right above the limb cannon.
We're getting close to 15.
So how does this flight compare to other emergency situations you've faced?
Well, I'd have to say that this is the most serious situation we've ever encountered in manned spaceflight.
Houston, filters in place.
Roger, 13.
Suits are relief to close. CO2 canister, select to secondary. All right.
I can hear air moving.
Just breathe normal, fellas.
Aquarius, please advise on CO2 status.
Yeah, Houston, we're taking a look at those numbers right now.
We're still holding close to 15, Houston. Roger that, standing by.
Houston, the CO2 level has dropped to 9, and it is still falling.
Yes. Good job.
That is good to hear, Aquarius. And you, sir, are a steely-eyed missile man.
So I love that clip because it is literally about making a square peg fit in a round hole, the quintessence of uncomfortable, shocking, and life-threatening change. It's also a great example for those of you interested in creativity, in creative process in action. But think about it. If the NASA engineers simply said, it can't be done, the film would have had a very different ending. Spoiler alert. They had to go beyond the known, or as they said, go beyond any contingency they'd ever remotely planned for to adjust to a new reality. And how many of us in our lives have had to adjust to a new reality that we had not planned for? They had to shed the skin of the known and find something new, practical, and untested. So here's the takeaway from that. Complacency is the enemy of innovation. Think about that a minute. Complacency is the enemy of innovation. Some of us are born with restless and curious minds, but for many of us, just learning the rules of our own occupations and social interactions is complex enough, and having to develop contingency plans can feel like the ground has dropped beneath our feet. The innovators of our time, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, to name just a few, were not content to leave well enough alone. Few of us are Copernicus thinking of a revolutionary plan B with the luxury of time and a great intellect. Dealing with change in a fruitful way often happens because there's no alternative, which we just saw. Which is not to say literally that there's no alternative. You can wave a white flag and walk away, but you do so at your peril, because you have walked away from possibility, which is the gift that comes with a deceptive wrapping paper. Your Plan B moment is the opportunity to consider a new path, to find out more about who you are and what your innermost dreams are about, not the ones you made when you were 12 and resolutely stuck to without much reflection or new consideration. You've shed the old skin of obsolete ambitions and embark on a new journey. But enough about your life already. I've tried to convey the opportunity inherent in charting a new path, but change needn't be monumental or disastrous when it arrives. Sometimes the trick is in recognizing it at all. Being open to seeing something new provides its own opportunity. So, this is Dr. Arthur Fleming, who is an unprepossessing Scottish scientist in London who returned from a 2-week vacation to his characteristically unkempt lab with fresh eyes. A mold had taken over a culture plate and had contaminated it. Rather than cleaning everything up and getting back on his previous studies, he observed the mold and the properties contained within it that revolutionized the practice of medicine, the nascent beginnings of what we now know as penicillin. He is quoted as saying, "One sometimes finds what one isn't looking for." When I woke up just after dawn on September 28, 1928, I certainly didn't plan to revolutionize medicine by discovering the world's first antibiotic or bacteria killer. But I guess that's exactly what I did. So be open to change. Here's something maybe you haven't considered. As Americans, change is in our DNA. The United States was born from change. The Declaration of Independence was our salvo to the world that we were going our own way, and we did so without a real roadmap to guide our first steps. Think about that a minute. Imagine being driven around Mars by a prominent Martian. Suddenly, you decide to get out of the car and continue the journey on your own. Our independence from England left us essentially in that position, so we needed to create a constitution that could serve as a framework to develop a new kind of society. As we evolved, we added amendments to that constitution, which reflected an increasingly complex and sophisticated American character. But here, too, passivity to change can allow even a young and feisty democracy to allow a small faction to an unconsidered outcome. As a society, we risk letting change overtake us without a fight, or at least some sort of engagement. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the only U.S. president to serve more than 2 terms in office, there was nothing in the original Constitution in 1787 that barred it. But in 1947, Republicans began agitating for a change to the Constitution, limiting a sitting president to 2 consecutive terms. The resulting 22nd Amendment was pushed through the House of Representatives with 2 hours of debate. By the spring of the same year, 1947, 18 state legislatures had already approved it with virtually no public input. And by 1951, the required 3/4 of the country's state legislatures made it law. Now, I'm not editorializing on the merits of a 2-term limit, merely remarking that it's better to be the architect of change than the surprised observer of it. Just ask a bewildered Republican establishment. Other times, change makes its presence known in far less subtle ways, as it has with climate change. We ignore it at our collective peril, but here we can do more than pursue an alternative path that will enhance our own lives. And if you come away with one takeaway, it's this: There are moments of change we can pounce on that will improve the lives of generations beyond ours, and not just human ones. These are truly the opportunities for change that should be a clarion cry for global action, and in so doing, show us that the impending crisis can be a convener that transcends governments and boundaries. So in other words, change opens us to reconsider our dreams. There is a universe of possibilities that have been unconsidered. The Plan B moment mandates that we shift gears and reconfigure our goals. A hand injury that kills your dream of being a concert pianist? You may find conducting gives a different, perhaps deeper fulfillment. At the heart of change is a question: what now? To me, a life of inquiry is far more interesting than one that is simply filled with fixed answers. Religious fanatics of every stripe are content to rely on set answers and regard any deviation with scorn. That is not to say that a set of principles aren't necessary, merely that it is through asking questions of ourselves and others that we can move forward. So now we've looked at individual and global change, crises and opportunities. Let's consider some side effects. Change makes us more aware of the more permanent fixtures in our lives, the abiding love and acceptance of our family and friends, an appreciation for the beauty that is all around us, the knowledge that ice cream always tastes especially good on a sweltering day, and hot chocolate comforts on a frigid one. These small and not so small things keep us from becoming like the astronauts in that clip, floating around in a capsule, unable to put our feet on the ground. We can be open to change while maintaining our core values. Victor Hugo wrote, "Change your opinions, keep to your principles. Change your leaves, keep intact your roots." My message for you today, then, is that the Plan B moments of change provide us the opportunity to mine the deep wells of untapped imagination, finding solutions and new paths. They can be some of the most exciting, defining moments in our lives. So take a deep breath and jump in. Thanks.